The woman's voice drifted through the open window of the small homestead like a ghost's whisper, sweet and mournful, singing words meant for ears that would never hear them. And when Ryder Brooks reined in his horse on that scorching August afternoon in 1878, he felt his heart crack clean open at the sound. He had been riding through New Mexico territory for 3 weeks straight, searching for work after his previous employer's ranch went under during the hard winter. Fort Sumner was supposed to be just another stop, another place to water his horse and maybe find a hot meal before moving on. But that voice, that heartbreaking lullaby floating on the dry desert wind, stopped him as surely as a rope around his chest. Ryder was 26 years old, lean and weathered from years under the sun, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He had seen his share of hardship, lost his own family to fever when he was barely 16, and spent the decade since then drifting from ranch to ranch, town to town, never putting down roots because roots required something to anchor them. Hope, maybe, or purpose. The song continued, gentle and rhythmic, and Ryder found himself dismounting, his boots hitting the dusty ground with soft thuds. The homestead was modest, whitewashed wood weathered to gray in places, with a small corral that held no animals and a garden that looked carefully tended despite the harsh climate. Everything about the place spoke of solitude and quiet determination. He should have ridden on, should have minded his own business. But something in that voice called to the lonely places inside him, to the parts of himself he had carefully locked away after burying his parents and younger sister in the cold Montana ground all those years ago. Ryder walked closer, leading his horse by the reins, and peered through the window before he could stop himself. What he saw made his breath catch. A woman sat in a rocking chair near the fireplace, even though no fire burned in the August heat. She was young, perhaps 23 or 24, with long auburn hair that caught the light streaming through the window and turned it to flame. Her face was lovely in a delicate way, with high cheekbones and a soft mouth, but it was the expression she wore that struck him most. Pure, undiluted sorrow mixed with such tender hope that it hurt to witness. In her arms, she cradled emptiness. Her hands moved as though supporting an infant's head and body, rocking with the gentle motion of a mother soothing her child. The cradle beside her sat empty too, freshly painted and carefully made, with a small quilt folded at one end. The song she sang was an old lullaby, one Ryder remembered his own mother singing. The words spoke of safety and warmth, of angels watching and morning coming, of a love that would never let go. He must have made some sound, some sharp intake of breath, because suddenly her eyes snapped to the window and the singing stopped. For a moment they stared at each other, her face going pale with shock and then flushing with what might have been shame or anger or both. Ryder stepped back immediately, raising one hand in apology, but it was too late. The front door flew open and she stood there, all righteous fury and wounded pride, her eyes blazing. "How dare you," she said, her voice shaking. "How dare you spy on me like some kind of voyeur? What kind of man lurks outside a woman's window?" "Madam, I apologize," Ryder said quickly, meaning it. "I heard singing and I was concerned. This seemed like a lonely stretch of land and I thought maybe you needed help." "Do I look like I need help?" She crossed her arms over her chest, defensive. "No, madam, you look like you are managing just fine." He met her eyes steadily. "But you also look like you are carrying a grief that might crush you if you hold it alone much longer." The words were too bold, too familiar for a stranger, but they were also true, and something in her face crumpled just slightly before she gathered herself again. Up close, he could see the faint shadows under her eyes, The way her dress hung a little loose on her frame, as though she had lost weight she could not afford to lose. "You do not know anything about me or my life," she said, but the fire had gone out of her voice, leaving only exhaustion. "No, madam, I do not. But I know grief when I see it. I have carried enough of my own." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My name is Ryder Brooks. I am just passing through looking for work. I did not mean to intrude on your privacy." She studied him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face as though looking for deception. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Zelda Morrison," she said finally. "This is my land, was my land, is my land." She shook her head as though trying to clear it. "I inherited it when my husband passed 6 months ago." "I am sorry for your loss. Are you?" The question was not hostile, just tired. Most people say that, but they do not mean it. They just want to fill the silence with something. "I mean it," Ryder said quietly. "I lost my whole family when I was 16. My father, mother, and little sister, all within a week, scarlet fever. I understand what it is to have the world hollow out beneath your feet." Zelda's expression softened. "Then you do understand, more than most." She glanced back at the house, then at him again. "You said you are looking for work." "Yes, madam. I have experience with horses, cattle, general ranch work. I am good with repairs too, carpentry and such." "I cannot pay much," she said slowly, as though the words were being pulled from her against her better judgment. "But the corral fence needs mending, and the roof has some loose shingles. If you are willing to work for room and board plus a small wage, I could use the help." Ryder should have been wary. A young widow living alone, offering to take in a stranger, it was not a common or entirely proper situation. But something in him responded to the loneliness in her eyes, to the careful way she held herself as though afraid she might shatter. "That would suit me fine, madam. I have a small barn out back. You can sleep there. It is clean and there is a cot. I will provide 3 meals a day and $2 a week." "That is generous." "It is fair," she corrected. "Supper is at 6. You can stable your horse in the barn. There is a water pump around the side." She turned to go back inside, then paused. "Mr. Brooks." "Yes, madam." "What you saw through the window, I would appreciate it if you did not mention it to anyone in town." "I did not see anything worth mentioning," Ryder said truthfully. "Just a woman singing in her own home." Something like gratitude flickered across her face. "Thank you." The barn was indeed clean, better than many places Ryder had slept over the years. The cot had a decent mattress and clean blankets, and there was a small table with a lamp. He settled his horse, brushing down the mare and making sure she had plenty of water, and the oats Zelda had directed him to in a storage bin. As he worked, his mind kept returning to the image of Zelda rocking that empty air, singing with such tenderness. The pain in it was profound, and he found himself wanting to understand, to help somehow, though he knew he had no right to such feelings after knowing her for all of an hour. At 6 o'clock sharp, he washed up at the pump and knocked on the back door. Zelda answered, her hair now pinned up and an apron tied around her waist. She had composed herself completely, her face calm and neutral. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "I hope you like chicken and dumplings." The interior of the house was simple but comfortable, with handmade furniture and curtains in a cheerful yellow fabric. Everything was meticulously clean, almost compulsively so, as though Zelda kept herself together by keeping her surroundings in perfect order. The table was set for 2 and the food smelled wonderful. They ate in silence for a few minutes before Zelda spoke. "You said you have been drifting for 10 years. "Yes, madam. After my family died, I could not stay in Montana. Too many memories. I have worked my way south and west, ranch to ranch mostly." "That sounds lonely." "It is," he admitted, But grief makes you want to be lonely sometimes, makes it hard to let people close. She looked at him with something like recognition. Yes, it does. Your husband, Ryder said carefully. If you do not mind my asking, what happened? Zelda set down her fork, her hands trembling slightly. Thrown from a horse. He was breaking a new stallion and it spooked. He hit his head on a rock. She swallowed hard. He died instantly, they said, did not suffer. And the baby? The question was gentle but direct. Her eyes flew to his, wide with shock. How did you know, the cradle? Your singing. The way you held your arms. She stood abruptly, turning away from him, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. For a long moment she did not speak, and Ryder thought he had pushed too far, violated the fragile trust between them. I am sorry, he said. I should not have pried. No. Her voice was thick with unshed tears. No, maybe it is time someone knew. Maybe carrying it alone is making it worse. She turned back to him, and now the tears were falling silent tracks down her pale cheeks. I was 5 months along when Thomas died. The shock, the grief, it was too much. I lost the baby 2 weeks after we buried him. A son. Jesus, Ryder breathed. I am so sorry. Everyone in town knows about Thomas. But I never told anyone about the baby. I could not bear their pity, their sympathy. So I pretended it never happened. But I had already made the cradle, already started sewing clothes and blankets. Already imagined holding him, raising him, giving him the love I had stored up. She sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Sometimes I forget he is gone. Sometimes I wake up, and for a moment I think I am still pregnant, that Thomas is still alive, that our whole future is still waiting for us. And then I remember, and it is like losing them both all over again. Ryder reached across the table, offering his hand palm up. After a moment's hesitation, Zelda placed her hand in his. Her fingers were small and cold, trembling like a bird. Grief is not a straight road, he said quietly. It circles back on itself. Some days you will feel strong and some days it will knock you flat, but it does get easier to carry. I promise you that. How long did it take you? Years, he admitted. I am still carrying it, really, but now it is part of me instead of all of me. There is room for other things too, small joys, hope sometimes. She squeezed his hand, her eyes searching his face. Thank you for understanding. For not thinking I am mad. You are not mad. You are grieving. There is a difference. They finished the meal in more comfortable silence, and afterward Ryder helped her wash the dishes despite her protests. It felt strangely domestic, standing side by side at the basin, their hands occasionally brushing in the soapy water. He found himself noticing small things about her, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, the faint freckles across her nose, the graceful curve of her neck. When the kitchen was clean, he excused himself to the barn, but sleep was long in coming. He lay on the cot staring at the rough wooden ceiling, thinking about the sad young widow in the house, and the way his heart had responded to her pain, as though it recognized a mirror of its own. The next morning, Ryder began work on the corral fence, replacing rotted posts and restringing wire. It was hard, honest labor under the hot New Mexico sun, and he welcomed the burn in his muscles, the way physical exertion quieted the mind. Zelda brought him water at mid-morning and again at noon, along with a sandwich wrapped in cloth. You are making good progress, she observed, shading her eyes to survey his work. Should have it finished by tomorrow, then I will start on that roof. Mr. Brooks, can I ask you something? Ryder, please, and of course. Why did you really stop yesterday? You could have ridden right past. Most people would have. He set down his hammer, considering the question. Honestly, I do not know. Something in your voice, maybe. Or maybe I was tired of being alone and your sadness called to mine. He met her eyes. Does that make any sense? More than you know. She paused. "I am glad you stopped. I did not realize how much I needed another person around until you were here." "I am glad I stopped too." A small smile touched her lips, the first he had seen from her, and it transformed her face, giving him a glimpse of who she must have been before tragedy struck. "I am making pot roast for supper. I hope that is acceptable." "Madam, after months of my own sorry cooking over a campfire, anything you make would be a feast." She laughed, a soft sound but genuine, and Ryder felt something warm unfurl in his chest at the sound. The days fell into a rhythm. Ryder worked on the various repairs the homestead needed, and there were many. Thomas Morrison had been a dreamer more than a practical man, Zelda explained, always full of grand plans but not always following through on maintenance. She said it without bitterness, just a kind of fond exasperation. He wanted to breed the finest horses in the territory, she told Ryder one evening as they sat on the porch after supper, watching the sun paint the desert sky in shades of orange and purple. He had all these ideas about bloodlines and training methods. But then he would get distracted by something else, some other dream. Did you love him? The question was too personal, but they had moved past formality in the week he had been there. They talked easily now, sharing meals and small moments throughout the day. "I thought I did," Zelda said slowly. "I was 18 when we married. He was 25, charming and full of life. My parents approved. It seemed like the right thing." She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders against the cooling evening air. "But looking back, I think I loved the idea of him more than the reality. He was kind to me, never cruel. But there was always a distance between us, a part of himself he kept separate. Does that make me terrible to say that about my dead husband? No, it makes you honest." Ryder was quiet for a moment. "Did he know about the baby?" "No. I was waiting to be sure to get past the dangerous early months. I was going to tell him the week he died." Her voice caught. "So he died not knowing he would be a father, and our son died never knowing he was loved and wanted." "He knew," Ryder said firmly. "Maybe not consciously, but he knew. A mother's love is the first thing we know in this world before we have words or thoughts or even breath. Your son knew you loved him." Zelda turned to him, her eyes bright with tears in the fading light. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I do not. I just say what is true." She reached over and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. It was becoming a habit between them, this casual touching, these small intimacies that felt more significant than either of them acknowledged. Ryder knew he was falling for her, had probably been falling since that first moment he heard her singing. But she was a widow, still deep in mourning, and he was a drifter with nothing to offer but calloused hands and a damaged heart. 2 weeks into his stay, Ryder rode into Fort Sumner to buy supplies Zelda needed, nails and some fabric she had requested. The town was small but busy, a crossroads for cattle drives and a supply point for the scattered ranches in the area. It had a rough reputation, Fort Sumner, known for harboring outlaws and hosting more than its share of gunfights, but it was also a community where people looked out for their own. At the general store, the proprietor, a heavy-set man named Dalton, eyed Ryder with undisguised curiosity as he filled the order. "You are staying out at the Morrison place?" Dalton asked, his tone neutral but his eyes sharp. "Yes, sir. Doing some work for Mrs. Morrison." "That right." Dalton handed over the wrapped parcel of fabric. "She is a good woman, had a hard time of it." "Yes, sir. Town has been worried about her out there all alone, not safe for a woman by herself." He paused significantly. "Not proper either, if you take my meaning." Ryder kept his expression carefully neutral. "I am sleeping in the barn and doing honest work for honest pay. There is nothing improper about it." "Maybe not. But people talk. People should mind their own business." Dalton's eyebrows rose, but he did not push further. Ryder paid for the supplies and left, but the encounter left a bad taste in his mouth. He knew the man was right about one thing, though. The situation was not entirely proper, even if nothing inappropriate had happened. Zelda's reputation could suffer simply from having him there. He should leave. It was the honorable thing to do. But the thought of riding away from her, from the connection growing between them, made his chest ache. When he returned to the homestead, Zelda was in the garden, pulling weeds from around the struggling vegetables. She looked up at his approach, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, and smiled. That smile hit him like a physical blow, so warm and genuine and glad to see him. "Did you get everything?" she called. "Yes, madam." He dismounted, gathering the parcels from his saddlebag. "Ryder, what is wrong? You look troubled." He hesitated, then decided she deserved honesty. "I ran into some curiosity in town about me staying here." Her smile faded. "Ah, I wondered when that would start." "Zelda, I do not want to cause you problems. If my being here is going to damage your reputation, I should go." "No." The word came out sharp and certain. "No, I do not care what the town gossips say. You have been nothing but respectful and helpful. I will not send you away because small minds cannot conceive of a man and woman simply being friends." "Are we friends?" Ryder asked quietly. She met his eyes, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of all the unspoken feelings that had been building. "Yes, at least I hope we are." "I hope so too." He wanted to say more, to tell her what he was really feeling, but the timing was not right. She was still wearing black, still mourning, still fragile in ways that were not always visible. That evening, Zelda asked him to stay after supper, to sit with her in the parlor rather than retreating to the barn. It was a shift in their routine, an intimacy that made Ryder's heart beat faster. "I want to tell you about him," she said, settling into the rocking chair while Ryder took the straight-back chair opposite. "About the baby, if you are willing to listen, of course. I do not know why I need to tell you, but I do." She folded her hands in her lap, her eyes distant with memory. "The day I realized I was carrying him, I was terrified. Thomas and I had only been married a year, and things were already strained between us in small ways. I was not sure I was ready to be a mother. That is natural. But then I felt him move, just a tiny flutter like a butterfly inside me. And suddenly I was not scared anymore. I was excited. I started imagining who he would be, what he would look like. I would talk to him at night, tell him about his father, about the land, about all the things we would do together." Her voice grew thick. "I had names picked out. For a boy, I wanted Daniel. For a girl, Rose." "Daniel," Ryder repeated softly. "That is a good name. I lost him on a Tuesday. The pain started in the morning, and by evening it was over. The doctor said these things happen, that there was nothing to be done. He told me I was young and there would be other babies." She looked at Ryder, her eyes fierce. "But I did not want other babies. I wanted Daniel. I wanted my son." Ryder moved to her then, kneeling beside the rocking chair and taking both her hands in his. "You have every right to grieve him. He was real. He mattered. Sometimes I think I am going mad, singing to him, holding him as though he is still here. The town would lock me away if they knew." "You are not mad. You are a mother mourning her child. That is the most natural thing in the world." "But he was never born. He never took a breath. He lived," Ryder said firmly. "For 5 months he lived inside you. Your heart beat for both of you. That is real. That counts." Zelda began to cry then, deep wrenching sobs that seemed to come from the core of her being. Ryder pulled her into his arms, holding her as she shook, murmuring wordless comfort. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his shirt, and he could feel the dampness of her tears soaking through the fabric. They stayed like that for a long time, until her sobs quieted to hiccups and then to silence. She did not pull away, and Ryder did not release her. He was acutely aware of her body pressed against his, soft and warm and trembling. He was also aware that he would do anything, give anything to take away her pain. "Thank you," she whispered finally, her face still buried against his shoulder. "You do not need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You are the first person who has let me really grieve. Everyone else wanted me to be strong, to move on, to accept God's will or whatever platitude made them comfortable. But you just let me feel what I feel. Because what you feel is right. It is real." He pulled back just enough to look at her face, using his thumb to wipe away the tears on her cheeks. "You do not have to hide your grief from me, Zelda. Not ever." She looked at him with such tenderness that it made his throat tight. "How did I get so lucky as to have you ride past that day?" "I think maybe we both got lucky." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Ryder became aware that he was still holding her, that her face was just inches from his, that it would take almost nothing to close the distance and kiss her. But he did not. She was vulnerable, grieving, and he would not take advantage of that no matter how much he wanted her. Instead, he released her gently and stood. "I should let you get some rest." Disappointment flickered across her face, so quick he might have imagined it. "Yes, it is late." "Zelda?" "Yes. I am not going anywhere. Gossip or no gossip, unless you tell me to leave, I am staying." The smile she gave him was like sunrise. "Good, because I am not ready to let you go." The next few weeks passed in a haze of work and quiet companionship. Ryder finished the roof repairs and started on other projects, fixing a broken window frame, shoring up the barn's sagging door, building a new chicken coop for the hens Zelda wanted to buy. The work was satisfying in a way his previous jobs had not been, perhaps because he was building something that would last, that would make Zelda's life easier. And all the while, their connection deepened. They talked for hours every evening, sharing stories from their pasts, their hopes and fears, their views on everything from politics to poetry. Ryder discovered that Zelda was educated beyond most women of her station, her father having been a teacher who believed girls deserved the same learning as boys. She had read widely and thought deeply, and Ryder found himself challenged and engaged by their conversations in ways he had not been in years. He also discovered that she had a sly sense of humor, a tendency to make wry observations that caught him off guard and made him laugh. When she laughed, really laughed, her whole face lit up and years seemed to fall away from her. He lived for those moments, but there were still the hard moments too. He would sometimes find her standing at the cradle, her fingers trailing over the empty quilt. Once he came in from work to find her in the rocking chair again, arms cradled around nothing, singing softly. When she saw him, she did not stop or look ashamed. She just kept singing until the lullaby was finished, and when he held out his hand, she took it and let him pull her into an embrace. "Some days are harder than others," she said against his chest. "I know. Do you think I will ever stop hurting? I think the hurt will change, become something you can live with." He kissed the top of her head without thinking, then froze, worried he had overstepped. But Zelda just sighed and burrowed closer. "I am glad you are here. So am I." It was in early October, nearly 2 months after Ryder's arrival, that things changed between them. The weather had cooled slightly, bringing relief from the relentless summer heat, and Zelda decided to take a trip into Fort Sumner for church on Sunday. She invited Ryder to accompany her, and though he was not particularly religious, he agreed because he wanted to be near her. The service was held in a small whitewashed building that served as both church and schoolhouse. The congregation was modest, perhaps 40 people, and Ryder was aware of curious eyes tracking them as they entered. Zelda held her head high, though her hand trembled slightly on his arm. They sat together in a pew near the back, and Ryder tried to focus on the sermon, but his attention kept wandering to Zelda beside him. She looked beautiful in a deep blue dress, her hair pinned up beneath a simple bonnet. She had stopped wearing full mourning black a few weeks earlier, explaining that Thomas would not have wanted her to hide herself away. After the service, several townspeople approached to greet Zelda. Most were kind, asking how she was managing, but Ryder noticed the speculative looks directed his way. An older woman, introduced as Mrs. Patterson, was less subtle. "Zelda, dear, is this the young man we have heard is staying at your place?" "Yes, Mrs. Patterson, this is Mr. Brooks. He has been helping with repairs." "I see. And is he living in the house?" The question was pointed, disapproving. "He is staying in the barn," Zelda said coolly, "and his presence has been entirely proper and very helpful." "I would hate to think people are gossiping about a simple business arrangement." Mrs. Patterson had the grace to look slightly abashed. "Of course, dear, we just worry about you out there alone." "I am not alone. I have Mr. Brooks." After they left the church, Zelda was quiet on the ride home. Ryder could see the tension in her shoulders, the tight set of her jaw. "You do not have to defend me," he said finally. "Yes, I do. They have no right to judge you or question your character based on nothing but their own small-minded assumptions. They are trying to protect you. From what? From having help, from having a friend." She turned to him, her eyes flashing. "Or are they protecting me from the possibility of being happy again? Because sometimes I think that is what really bothers them. The idea that I might move on, might find joy after loss." Ryder pulled the wagon to a stop, the horses stamping impatiently. "Zelda, are you happy?" "Yes," she said simply. "For the first time since Thomas died, since Daniel died, I feel something other than grief. When you are around, I feel hopeful. I feel alive." "I feel the same way," he admitted. "You have made me want to stop running, to put down roots. But I do not want to rush you or pressure you. You have been through so much." "I know what I want," Zelda said firmly. She reached over and took his hand. "I want you to stay, not just as a hired hand. I want you here with me, truly with me." "Zelda, are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying I have feelings for you, Ryder. Deep feelings. I am saying that when I imagine my future now, you are in it." She took a breath. "I am saying I think I am falling in love with you." Ryder felt his heart stutter in his chest. "I know I am falling in love with you. I think I started the first moment I heard you singing." "Then why are we holding back?" "Because you deserve proper courting. You deserve time to heal, to be sure this is what you really want and not just grief making you reach for comfort." "I am sure," she said. "I have had months to sit with my grief, to know it thoroughly. What I feel for you is separate from that. It is its own thing, bright and real and good." Ryder lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "Then let me court you properly. Let me do this right." "I would like that." They smiled at each other, and then Ryder urged the horses forward again, driving them home. Home. When had he started thinking of the Morrison place as home? That evening, Ryder presented Zelda with a bouquet of wildflowers he had gathered from the meadow beyond the property line. They were simple, desert blooms in shades of yellow and purple, but Zelda accepted them as though they were the finest roses. "They are beautiful," she said, burying her face in them even though they had little scent. "Not as beautiful as you." She blushed, actually blushed, and Ryder felt a surge of affection so strong it nearly knocked him over. He wanted to kiss her so badly his hands shook, but he restrained himself. When they kissed for the first time, he wanted it to be perfect, wanted her to have no doubts. Over the next few weeks, Ryder courted Zelda with old-fashioned determination. He brought her flowers regularly, carved her a new hairbrush from smooth pine wood, read to her in the evenings from her favorite books. They took long walks in the cooling autumn air, talking and laughing and simply being together. He also started attending church with her regularly, not because he had found God, but because it mattered to her. The congregation slowly grew accustomed to seeing them together, and the gossip faded to background noise. One evening in late October, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Zelda leaned her head against Ryder's shoulder. "I need to tell you something," she said softly. "What is it?" "I went to the cemetery yesterday to visit Thomas and Daniel." Ryder went still. He knew where they were buried, in the small plot on the edge of town, but Zelda had not mentioned visiting since he arrived. "How was it?" "Peaceful." "I told them about you." She felt him tense and hurried on. "I told Thomas that I would always remember the good times we had, but that I was ready to live again, to love again. And I told Daniel that he would always be my first child, my first love, but that I hoped to give him brothers and sisters someday, that his mother deserved to be a mother in truth, not just in grief." What did it feel like, saying those things? Like permission. Like letting go of the guilt I have been carrying about feeling happy when they are gone. She lifted her head to look at him. "They would want me to be happy. I know that now." "I will never try to replace them," Ryder said seriously. "They will always be part of your story. I know. And that is one of the reasons I love you. You understand that grief and love can coexist, that making room for new joy does not mean forgetting old sorrow. You said you love me. I do. I love you, Ryder Brooks." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "I love you too, Zelda Morrison. I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "Then kiss me," she whispered. "I have been waiting for you to kiss me for weeks." So he did. He lowered his mouth to hers gently, giving her every chance to pull away, but she did not. Instead, she pressed closer, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise, and when they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "That was worth waiting for," Zelda said, her eyes shining. "I have wanted to do that since the first week I was here." "Then why did you make us wait so long?" "Because I wanted to make sure, because I wanted you to be certain." He kissed her again, longer this time, deeper. "Because I planned to marry you and I wanted to do everything right." Zelda pulled back, her eyes wide. "You want to marry me?" "Yes. If you will have me. I know I do not have much to offer. I have some money saved, enough to buy a few horses to start the breeding program your husband dreamed of. I am a hard worker and I will spend every day trying to make you happy. But I do not have land or a big house or any of the things a woman like you deserves." "A woman like me deserves a man who loves her," Zelda said firmly. "A man who sees her grief and does not run from it. A man who makes her laugh and holds her when she cries and looks at her like she hung the moon." She smiled through sudden tears. "A man like you. Is that a yes?" "Yes. Yes, I will marry you." Ryder kissed her again, joy flooding through him like sunlight. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing, giddy with happiness and the beautiful simplicity of two lonely people finding each other. "When?" Zelda asked. "When should we get married?" "Whenever you are ready." "Tomorrow, next month, next year, I am not going anywhere." "What about December?" "Christmas week. That gives us time to plan, to let the town get used to the idea." "Christmas week sounds perfect." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking about the future with the kind of hopeful excitement Ryder had not felt in years. Zelda wanted to expand the garden, maybe get some chickens and a cow. Ryder wanted to build a proper stable and start breeding horses like Thomas had dreamed. They talked about children, about the family they would build together, and though Zelda's voice caught when she mentioned becoming a mother, there was hope there too. "I am scared," she admitted. "Scared of getting pregnant again, scared of losing another baby." I am scared too, Ryder said honestly, but we will face it together. Whatever happens, we will face it together. The next few weeks were busy with preparations. Zelda sewed a new dress in cream-colored cotton, simple but lovely, and Ryder bought himself a new shirt and had his one good suit cleaned and pressed. They announced their engagement in church, and while there were some raised eyebrows, most of the congregation seemed genuinely happy for them. Mrs. Patterson approached Zelda after the announcement, her expression apologetic. "I owe you an apology, dear. I judged unfairly when I should have been happy you found help and companionship." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. That means a lot. He seems like a good man." "He is. The best I have ever known." Ryder also took a trip to the nearest large town to buy a ring. It was simple, a thin gold band with a small garnet stone, but when he showed it to Zelda, she cried. "It is perfect," she said. "Absolutely perfect." The wedding was held on the day before Christmas, in the same small church where they had sat together that Sunday in October. The building was decorated with pine boughs and candles, filling the air with the scent of evergreen and wax. Zelda looked radiant in her cream dress, her auburn hair arranged in soft curls, and Ryder could barely speak his vows for the emotion choking his throat. "I promise to love you in sorrow and in joy," he said, holding both her hands. "I promise to honor your past while building our future. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your love for all the days of my life." Zelda's vows were equally heartfelt. "I promise to trust you with my heart, even though it has been broken. I promise to build a life with you full of laughter and hope. I promise to love you fiercely and completely, today and always." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ryder kissed her thoroughly, to the delight of the assembled guests. There was a small reception afterward at the church, with cake and punch and music from a fiddle player. They danced together, Ryder's hand firm at Zelda's waist, her head resting against his shoulder. "Happy," he murmured. "Happier than I ever thought I would be again." They spent their wedding night in the house, in the bedroom that had once been Zelda's alone but was now theirs together. Ryder was gentle and patient, mindful of her past pain, but Zelda met him with equal passion, showing him without words how much she trusted him, how completely she had given him her heart. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, Zelda traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For stopping that day. For staying. For filling my home with love just like you promised." Ryder pulled her closer, kissing her forehead. "You filled my life with purpose, with hope. I am the one who should be thanking you. Then let's just be grateful we found each other. Deal." The winter passed in quiet contentment. Ryder and Zelda worked together to improve the homestead, planning for the future. In January, Ryder bought 2 mares and a stallion at auction, good stock with strong lines, and began the process of building Thomas's dream of a horse breeding program. Zelda was supportive, helping with the training and care, and it felt good to honor the first husband's vision while making it his own. In February, Zelda realized she was pregnant. The discovery brought both joy and terror, and she cried in Ryder's arms for an hour after the doctor confirmed it. "What if I lose this baby too?" she asked, her face streaked with tears. "Then we will grieve together and try again if you want to. But Zelda, you cannot live in fear of what might happen. You have to believe this baby will be healthy and strong." "I want to believe that." "Then believe it." "I believe it enough for both of us right now, and eventually you will believe it too." Ryder was protective without being smothering, making sure Zelda rested but not treating her like she was fragile. He talked to the baby every night, his hand on her growing belly, telling their child about the life waiting for them. "We have a good place here," he would say. "Land that your mother and I are building together, horses that will be yours to learn on, and parents who already love you more than you can imagine. As Zelda's belly grew, her fear slowly gave way to excitement. She sewed baby clothes with trembling hands, and Ryder repainted the cradle, making it sturdy and beautiful. They did not talk about Daniel often, but his memory was there, acknowledged and honored. In early September of 1879, just over a year after Ryder had first ridden onto the Morrison property, Zelda went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Ryder thought he might lose his mind with worry, pacing the parlor while the doctor and midwife worked with Zelda in the bedroom. But finally, as the sun rose golden over the desert, he heard the sound he had been praying for, a baby's lusty cry. The midwife emerged minutes later, smiling broadly. "You have a son, Mr. Brooks, and your wife is doing well." Ryder nearly collapsed with relief. When he was allowed into the bedroom, he found Zelda propped up against the pillows, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was wailing with impressive volume. "Ryder, meet your son," Zelda said, her voice full of wonder. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, looking down at the tiny face. "He is perfect. He is healthy and loud and absolutely perfect." She looked up at Ryder, tears streaming down her face, but these were tears of pure joy. "We did it. We have a baby. You did it. You were so brave, so strong." "What should we name him?" Ryder had thought about this, had a name ready, but now he hesitated. "I was thinking maybe we could call him Daniel. If that is not too painful, I thought maybe it would be a way to honor the child we both loved but never got to raise." Zelda's breath caught. "You would do that? Name him for my first baby. He is part of your story, and your story is part of mine now. Besides, you said yourself that Daniel would always be your first child. Maybe this little one can carry his name forward, give it the life it deserves." "Daniel Thomas Brooks," Zelda said softly. "Thomas for his father, Daniel for his brother. That sounds perfect." They sat together, the three of them, watching the sunrise through the window and marveling at the small miracle they held. Baby Daniel eventually quieted, his tiny fist wrapped around Ryder's finger with surprising strength, and Ryder felt his heart expand to proportions he had not known possible. "I love you," he told Zelda. "I love you both so much. I love you too. You gave me back my life, Ryder. You gave me back my ability to hope and dream and love." The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Daniel was a colicky baby who did not sleep well, but neither Ryder nor Zelda minded. After so much loss, they were grateful for every sleepless night, every diaper change, every feeding. These were the mundane miracles of parenthood, and they cherished them. Ryder proved to be a devoted father, walking the floors with Daniel when he cried, singing him lullabies in a deep voice that seemed to soothe the baby when nothing else would. Zelda would watch them together, her heart full to bursting, hardly able to believe how much her life had changed in such a short time. The horse breeding program began to show promise too. The first foals were born in the spring of 1880, strong and healthy, and Ryder was able to sell them for good prices. The money went back into improving the stock and the facilities, and slowly but surely, the Brooks Ranch began to establish a reputation for quality horses. In the summer of 1881, Zelda discovered she was pregnant again. This time the fear was less paralyzing, tempered by the healthy toddler chasing chickens around the yard. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and in February of 1882, they welcomed a daughter into the world. "What should we name her?" Ryder asked, cradling the tiny girl who had her mother's auburn hair. "Rose," Zelda said immediately. "I always loved that name. Rose Brooks, it is beautiful." "Rose Daniel Brooks," Zelda corrected. "Daniel for her brother. You want to use it again. I want both our children to carry the name, to remember that love is stronger than loss. Rose was an easier baby than Daniel had been, content to sleep and eat and observe the world with solemn gray eyes. Daniel, now a rambunctious 2-year-old, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help with her care. Ryder and Zelda had their hands full, but it was the best kind of full, the kind that came from abundance rather than lack. As the years passed, the ranch prospered. Ryder's reputation as a horse trainer grew, and buyers came from as far away as Texas and Colorado to purchase Brooks bred stock. They were able to hire help, taking on a couple of ranch hands and a housekeeper to help Zelda with the children and the endless work of running a household. But despite their growing success and comfort, Ryder and Zelda never forgot where they had started. Every year on the anniversary of the day they met, they would sit on the porch in the evening and remember. Zelda would sing the lullaby she had been singing to the empty cradle, but now she sang it to their children, to the life they had built together. And every Christmas, they would visit the cemetery, bringing flowers to the graves of Thomas and the first Daniel. They would tell them about the ranch, about the children, about the full and happy life Zelda had found. It was important to both of them that the past was honored even as they lived fully in the present. In 1885, when Daniel was 6 and Rose was 3, Zelda gave birth to twin boys. They named them Samuel and James, and the house that had once echoed with loneliness was now filled with noise and laughter, and the controlled chaos of 4 young children. "Sometimes I cannot believe this is my life," Zelda told Ryder one evening as they watched their children play in the yard before bedtime. Daniel was teaching Rose how to braid rope while the twins tumbled together like puppies. "Having regrets?" Ryder asked, though he was smiling. "Not a single one. I just mean that 7 years ago I was so broken, so lost. I thought my life was over at 23, and now look at all this." She gestured at the children, at the thriving ranch spread out around them. "Look at what we built." "You built it," Ryder said. "You had the courage to let love back in after loss. That took more strength than I can even comprehend." "We built it together," Zelda corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you." Ryder pulled her close, kissing her temple. "Do you ever think about him? About Daniel?" "Every day," she said softly. "Every single day. I see him in our children, in little Daniel especially. I think about who he would have been, what he would have looked like. But it does not hurt the way it used to. Now it is just a gentle ache, a reminder of the capacity of a mother's heart to love. I think he would be happy you named our son after him, that his name gets to be attached to so much life and joy. I hope so. I like to think he is watching over all of them, proud to be a big brother even if it is from heaven." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set and the children play, grateful for the simple gift of being together. This was what Ryder had promised that first day, standing outside her window hearing her sing to emptiness. "Let me fill your home with love," he had said, though not in so many words. And he had kept that promise, day after day, year after year, with steadfast devotion. As the children grew, so did the ranch. By 1890, the Brooks Horse Ranch was one of the most respected breeding operations in New Mexico Territory, known for producing intelligent, sturdy horses suited to the harsh desert climate. Ryder and Zelda had expanded their holdings too, purchasing adjacent land and building a larger house to accommodate their growing family. Daniel, now 11, showed a natural talent with horses that made Ryder's heart swell with pride. Rose, at 8, was more interested in books and learning, often found reading under the cottonwood tree near the house. The twins, now 5, were inseparable troublemakers who kept everyone on their toes. In the fall of 1890, Zelda discovered she was pregnant once more, a surprise given that she was now 35 and had assumed their family was complete. The pregnancy was harder than the previous ones, leaving her tired and uncomfortable, but the baby, a girl they named Grace, arrived healthy and squalling in the spring of 1891. 5 children, Ryder marveled, holding tiny Grace while Zelda rested. "We have 5 children. Are you complaining?" Zelda asked, though she was smiling. "Not even a little bit, though we might need to add on to the house again, or teach them to share rooms better." She held out her arms for the baby. "Let me see our daughter." As Ryder handed Grace over, he was struck by the contrast between this scene and his first sight of Zelda 13 years earlier. Then she had been cradling emptiness, singing to loss. Now her arms were full of life, her home was full of laughter, and her eyes were full of contentment. "What are you thinking about?" Zelda asked, catching his expression. "About how far we have come, about how lucky I am." "We are both lucky. Luck brought you past my door that day." "I think it was more than luck. I think it was meant to be. I think so too." The years continued to roll by, bringing changes and challenges, but also deep satisfaction. They weathered droughts and good years, sickness and health, arguments and reconciliations. Through it all, the love between Ryder and Zelda remained the foundation on which everything else was built. In 1898, Daniel, now 19, married a local girl named Sarah and announced his intention to stay on the ranch, working alongside his father. Ryder was thrilled, both for his son's happiness and for the continuation of the family business. Rose, at 16, was planning to attend teacher's college, something almost unheard of for a girl from a ranch family. But Ryder and Zelda supported her ambitions, remembering Zelda's own father who had valued education for all. The twins, now 13, were still best friends and partners in mischief, though they were beginning to show interest in different aspects of ranch life. Samuel loved the horses like his father and older brother, while James was more mechanically inclined, always tinkering with equipment and tools. Grace, at 7, was a quiet child who seemed to observe everything and miss nothing. She had Zelda's green eyes and thoughtful nature, and both parents suspected she would do something remarkable with her life, though what that might be remained to be seen. In the summer of 1900, as the new century dawned full of promise and change, Ryder and Zelda celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren, for Daniel and Sarah had produced 2 babies of their own, gathered at the ranch for a party that lasted long into the warm evening. As the sun set, Ryder and Zelda slipped away from the celebration, walking hand in hand to the spot where Ryder had first stopped his horse all those years ago. The house had changed, expanded, and improved, but this view was essentially the same. 20 years, Zelda said wonderingly. "It feels like both a lifetime and no time at all." "Best 20 years of my life," Ryder said. "Best thing I ever did was stop when I heard you singing. Best thing I ever did was let you stay." They stood together in the fading light, surrounded by the sounds of their family celebrating, and reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From grief to joy, from loneliness to abundance, from empty cradles to full hearts. "You still think about them?" Ryder asked quietly. "Thomas and the first Daniel. Sometimes. Less often now, but yes. They were part of my life, part of my story. I will never forget them." She looked up at her husband. "But you gave me a second chance at happiness, Ryder. You gave me a family and a home and a love I treasure every single day." "You did the same for me. I was just drifting before I found you, existing but not really living. Then we saved each other." "Yes," Ryder agreed. "I think we did." As they walked back to the party, arms around each other, They passed the small family cemetery they had established on the property. Among the markers for various beloved pets and one ranch hand who had no family was a small stone that read simply, "Daniel Morrison, forever loved, forever remembered." Zelda paused there, as she often did, laying her hand on the warm stone. "I hope you are proud of your namesake," she whispered. "He is growing into a fine man. All your brothers and sisters are thriving. We gave them the love you never got to feel, but I think you know it anyway." Ryder stood beside her, his hand covering hers on the stone. They stayed that way for a moment, honoring the past, before turning back toward the future, toward the laughter and light spilling from their home. The years continued to pass, bringing more changes. Rose did become a teacher, eventually opening her own school in Fort Sumner. The twins went their separate ways as they grew older, Samuel staying on the ranch while James became a successful blacksmith and mechanic in Santa Fe. Grace surprised everyone by showing a talent for painting, her artwork eventually being displayed in galleries across the Southwest. Through it all, through the births and deaths, the joys and sorrows, the ordinary miracles of daily life, Ryder and Zelda remained each other's constant. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their faces lining with the marks of laughter and sun, their hands becoming gnarled but still fitting perfectly together. In 1920, in their 70th and 65th years respectively, they sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching their great-grandchildren play in the yard. The world had changed enormously since that August day in 1878 when a cowboy stopped his horse to listen to a widow's lullaby. Automobiles had replaced horses for most purposes, though the Brooks Ranch still bred quality stock. New Mexico had become a state. Wars had been fought and won. The Wild West they had known was fading into legend, but some things remained constant. Love remained constant. Family remained constant. The connection between two souls who had found each other in their darkest moments remained constant. "You remember what you said to me that first week?" Zelda asked, her voice still clear despite her years. "About grief circling back on itself." "I do. You were right. It did get easier to carry, and eventually there was room for so much more than just pain. I am glad. Ryder." "Yes, my love. Thank you for filling my home with love. You kept your promise." He squeezed her hand, these hands that had held each other through everything life could throw at them. "And thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your broken heart and letting me help put it back together." "We put it back together, together." They sat in the golden afternoon light, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built, the family they had created, the love they had nurtured for over 4 decades. The empty cradle was long gone, replaced by generations of children who carried forward the legacy of two people who had refused to let tragedy have the final word. When Zelda passed peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1922, Ryder held her hand and whispered words of love until the very end. She was buried in the family cemetery, next to the small stone for Daniel Morrison, and Ryder visited every day, telling her about the ranch, about the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, about everything she was missing. "I will join you soon," he would say, "but not quite yet. There is still work to be done here." He lived 2 more years, staying active on the ranch until the very end, teaching his great-grandchildren about horses and honor and the importance of love. When he died in the fall of 1924, quietly in his chair on the porch he had shared with Zelda for so many years, his family mourned deeply, but also celebrated a life extraordinarily well lived. They buried him beside Zelda, their stones side by side, and the inscription on his reed, "Ryder Brooks, beloved husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather." He stopped when he heard her sing, and on hers, Zelda Brooks' beloved wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. She taught him love could heal. The Brooks Ranch continued for generations after them, passing down through the family along with the story of how it all began. The story of a grieving widow singing lullabies to an empty cradle, and the cowboy who heard her and said, in actions if not exactly those words, "Let me fill your home with love," and he had. Oh, how he had.